Today, we're going to be talking about cybersecurity and what you can do to protect your organization from a cyber attack. To provide some perspective, CBS.com notes that 1.5 million cyber attacks occur every year, 3 attacks per minute worldwide. It costs companies an average of $3.92 million to fix a data breach in 2019. And as well as the financial cost, there's also environmental, technical, human, and reputational costs. The global count of cyber attacks is constantly on the rise, especially during the complex period of the COVID-19 pandemic. Just take a look at the graph aggregating the statistics till 2018, even before the pandemic started. Most organizations have developed some level of cyber incident response capabilities, yet these capabilities often address only short-term responses and IT issues. What's more, though staff may be fully trained and educated, when an actual crisis occurs, it can seem that everybody has suddenly forgotten how to respond and act. That could happen due to many different reasons. One of them would be the fact that in most cases, incident response training in organizations includes only theoretical explanations and some simulations, but hardly any actual experience of going through a complete cyber attack. Feeling overwhelmed? Well, we can help you. Not only do we cover the theory behind cyber attacks and the possible tools that you can use to detect and to respond to them, we also provide practical training in how to respond in a timely and organized manner to prevent further escalation or damage to your organization, which in the end could result in a shutdown of your production environment and interruption to or cessation of your processes or services to your customers. Management level to technical IT, but also OT, SCADA. A key part of our training approach is to simulate the experience of being under attack. Our ethical hackers will perform attacks in our safe and isolated training environments, based on real-life hacks and attacks. We have built centers of excellence around the world, which serve as test beds or training environments, and provide comprehensive training facilities for end users, IT and infrastructure specialists, cyber incident responders, SOC analysts, SIEM operators, and many other key personnel of our clients. We have offices and customers all over the world, serving customers in a wide range of sectors, such as large industrial, power generation and distribution, and critical national infrastructure organizations. We don't emulate or simulate. We do things for real. Every training facility replicates and implements all the critical components of the customer's real-life work environment and infrastructure, customized in a miniature version. For instance, for a power generation customer, we replicate pipeline systems, turbines, monitoring systems, and controllers, and implement true-to-life environment utilizing all the well-known SCADA controllers, such as Motorola, ABB, Siemens, General Electric, Schneider Electric, and more, and all the relevant cyber and IT equipment. Our team of highly specialized ethical hackers, which are real flesh and blood specialists with lots of practical experience and not just scripts or state machines executing automated attacks, test and assess this environment from the cybersecurity perspective, including any new architecture and technologies being used. After that, they develop the cyber attack lifecycle by reverse engineering protocols and advanced real-life attack scenarios that have actually taken place in the world in order to understand and discover the vulnerabilities that are relevant for the specific customer and their environment. This process culminates in executing a full-scale cyber attack against the training organization. In order to achieve that level of realism and combine it with a complete learning and knowledge-building experience, our training is uniquely built on a principle of the 3 core experiences: theory, lab training, and real-world attacks. You can compare this with getting a driver's license. First, you have to learn the traffic rules. This is the theory stage. Then, together with an instructor, you apply the traffic rules learned to the actual car controls as you practice maneuvering in traffic, driving on different types of roads, etc., under strict supervision. This is the lab training. Finally, the driving test will determine whether you know the theory and can drive a car safely in real traffic, in our case, in the event of a real-world attack. Theory. This needed in order to create a complete version of the cybersecurity environment. Trainees learn the different tools and techniques used by hackers and the capabilities and techniques that defenders can then use to thwart them. Lab training. All theory and tools are combined in an isolated environment, where the trainee needs to investigate, mitigate, and solve cyber-related incidents and real-world attacks. In our safe, controlled, but lifelike environment, our professional hackers perform attacks to give our trainees the chance to apply their newfound knowledge and skills in a practical way. Uses the concept of 3 players: blue, red, and white team. Each team of players takes part in the relevant core experience and interacts actively with the other teams in the process. Blue team. The trainees are the blue team. During the training process, they go through all 3 core experiences that have already been mentioned. Red team. The red team are professional hackers, guiding and tutoring the trainees as part of the lab training and performing coordinated attacks against the blue team. White team. The trainers are the white team, responsible for the coordination, flow, and dynamics between all the teams, guiding the experience to ensure the success of the training. The white team is involved in all stages of the training process, building the right knowledge and practice in the trainees. The unique combination of the blue, red, and white teams working in synergy and moving methodically together through the 3 core experiences of the cyber training process, the theory study, the lab training, and the real-world attacks, enables trainees to experience the full life cycle of a cyber attack against an organization, backing their experience with learning and understanding the right terminology, concepts, and methods, including the hacker's approach and methodology. To understand the different methods an attacker may use to get hold of your sensitive data, we need to understand that the hackers are going to be using a well-formed methodology, following a specific pattern or path. This methodology is called APT, Advanced Persistent Threat. An advanced persistent threat is an attack campaign in which an attacker or team of attackers gains access to an organization's sensitive network and stays there undetected for a long period of time. The intention of an APT or APT attack can be stealing data, or sometimes even causing damage to the network, the organization, or to customers in service. Let's understand the meaning of each of the terms creating the APT abbreviation. APT attacks target organizations and sectors with high-value information, such as national defense, manufacturing, and the financial industry. An APT attacker can use several different types of social engineering to gain access. They'll try to pinpoint and select a victim that's gaining access to the network through legitimate means. Once access has been achieved, the attacker establishes a backdoor. So let's go a bit more into detail about the steps or the roadmap which the attacker will most likely take. Information gathering. First, the attacker tries to get hold of the victim's information. This is also referred to as the reconnaissance phase. This can be collected using corporate websites, press releases, public documents and reports, job offers, maybe combined with IP addresses, ports, and OS versions, or company web server information. The initial compromise. Based on the information that they've collected, the attacker will then plan their attack, maybe creating a phishing email with an infected file as an attachment. This phase is also referred to as intrusion. Establish foothold. If the victim falls into the trap set by the attacker, malicious software will be installed on their system in the exploitation phase. The attacker makes sure to stay undetected, creating backdoors to maintain control and access. Privileges escalation. This stage depends on the user privileges in the system being attacked. If the attacker cannot gain sufficient access to achieve their objectives, they can use the backdoor that they've created to install more advanced tooling to acquire administrator rights. Internal reconnaissance. At this stage, the attacker collects more information about the victim's infrastructure. What are the trust relationships which parties can be contacted through the network? Move laterally. Using the information collected in the previous stage, the attacker can now expand their access to multiple different systems, creating further backdoors to ensure continuous access and to gain more access to data. Maintain presence. In this obfuscation anti-forensic phase, the attacker hides in plain sight, covering their tracks or even creating false trails to confuse or slow down forensic teams. Complete mission. This is the extraction phase, getting data out of the compromised system, and exfiltration of the stolen data from the victim's network. To illustrate the process of an APT, let's take a look at the animation of some of the main phases. Using social media, the attacker gathers the necessary information to select its victim. The attacker sends a phishing mail with an infected attachment, which will then deliver its malicious code into the system. The malicious software enables the attacker to move through the network, infecting several different departments. The objective of the attacker has been met. Sensitive company data can now be retrieved by the attacker. As we've seen, the APT defines the stages of the hacker's process as they attack an organization. It's essentially a hacker's workflow. But what can we do about it? First, we need to get a deeper understanding of what it is that we're up against, which begins with categorizing attacker behavior. The MITRE ATT&CK framework is the tool of choice created in 2003 to do just that. The MITRE ATT&CK framework is a database of the different methods that an attacker could use to perform each one of the stages of the attack. It's used worldwide across multiple disciplines, including intrusion detection, threat hunting, security engineering, threat intelligence, red teaming, and risk management. MITRE has studied the known behaviors of prominent attacker groups, which can be mapped onto a matrix to model threats like this. Security teams can use their maps, create their own, or copy open source models, implementing each stage of the full APT cycle using standard MITRE methods. Within each tactic in the MITRE ATT&CK matrix, there are attacker techniques, which describe the actual activity carried out by the attacker. Some techniques have sub-techniques that explain how an attacker carries out a specific technique in greater detail. The attack framework is essentially the attacker's playbook: how they get into your system, how they move, what they do, what their end goals are, and how it impacts your system. So, how do you use the MITRE ATT&CK framework? The MITRE framework can help you in several different ways. Here are a few. Attacker emulation. You can assess security by applying intelligence about an attacker and how they operate to emulate a threat. Attack can be used to create attacker emulation scenarios to test and to verify defenses. Red teaming. Attack acts as an attacker to demonstrate the impact of a breach. It can be used to create red team plans and organize operations. Behavioral analytics development. Attack can be used to simplify and organize patterns of suspicious activity deemed malicious, linking together suspicious activity to monitor attack activity. Defense gap assessment. Attack can be used to determine what parts of the enterprise lack defenses or visibility, and to assess existing tools or to test new tools prior to purchasing, to determine security coverage and prioritize investment. SOC maturity assessment. Similar to defensive gap assessment, attack can be used to determine how effective a Security Operations Center, SOC, is at detecting, analyzing, and responding to breaches. Cyber threat intelligence enrichment. Enhancing information about threats and threat actors, attack enables defenders to assess whether they're able to defend against specific advanced persistent threats, ATP, and common behaviors across multiple threat actors. To visualize an attacker APT-based attack, we mapped one on the MITRE ATT&CK framework. Here we can see how an email phishing attack is deconstructed. The phishing attack used in this example is using all the attack techniques. Initial access, techniques that use various entry vectors to gain an initial foothold within a network. Here, phishing is the entry vector. Execution, techniques that result in running attacker-controlled code on a local or remote system. Persistence, techniques used to maintain persistent access to a system. Privilege escalation, techniques used to gain higher level privileges on a system or network. Defense evasion, techniques used to avoid detection and elevate rights. Credential access, techniques for stealing credentials, such as account names and passwords. Discovery, techniques used to gain knowledge about the system and internal network. Lateral movement, techniques used to enter and then control remote systems on a network from the already compromised host. Attackers typically have to pivot through multiple machines, usually the weakest link in the chain of machines, in order to ultimately reach their end objective. Collection, techniques used to gather information that is relevant to following through on the attacker's objectives. Command and control, techniques that attackers may use to communicate with systems under their control, often disguised to look like normal HTTP traffic, or like in this case, using an encrypted tunnel. Exfiltration, techniques used to steal data from your network using established backdoor communication. Impact, damaging the host or company by destroying data and covering the attacker's tracks. The answer is its completeness. We provide our trainees with all the concepts, terms, methodologies, tools, and understanding required to successfully cope with a complex cyber attack targeted against their organization. And we do this by taking our trainees to a complete journey through all the stages of the full-scale APT attack process, performed by our professional hackers according to the various definitions of the MITRE ATT&CK methodology. Now let's take a look at the MITRE attack model as it plays out in a demo attack run on Chaos, offensive command and control platform. Here we have the MITRE attack matrix that we already discussed, and we'll follow the attacker as they launch their attack. In this example, we'll be looking at an APT, Advanced Persistent Threat, in which the attacker gains initial access by sending a spear phishing email to deliver ransomware, a form of malware designed for the sole purpose of extorting money from victims. The email contains a malicious attachment to infect an employee's machine, and the attacker then uses the malware to access sensitive information. This is the attacker command and control server as it appears in Chaos. In real life, the attacker will have a similar setup. The attacker selects phishing email from their list of exploitations. They then send the malicious email using a source address that makes it look like it came from within the organization. In the black box here, we see the command that is responsible for sending out the spoof email. The next step is execution. Our attacker wants the user to execute the attack. They rely on specific actions being taken by the user in order to execute the malware. To make sure the user does what is required, the attacker subjects them to social engineering, a kind of psychological manipulation that gets them to perform a certain action. In this case, using an innocent-looking document attachment. Meanwhile, the attack victim is at their device. They log into their email account, access their mailbox, and open the file attached to the email, in this case a PDF. Here we see the PowerShell window that has been triggered by opening the PDF. This is how the malware is downloaded and executed on the machine. Opening the Process Explorer tool on the victim's computer, we can see the download and execution of the malware process that is happening behind the scenes as they opened the PDF attachment. The PDF file exploits a vulnerability in the PDF reader software that allows it to download and execute the malware. Back at the attacker's command and control server, a new session has been created, indicating that the employee's machine is now being controlled by the attacker. Initial access has been granted, and the attack has been executed. Now for the persistent step. The malware has attached itself to the apps that run automatically when the machine is started up. This ensures that the attacker will still have control over the machine even if it is rebooted. In addition, the attacker creates a new user account as a backup, as we're about to see. Opening the user account list on the victim's machine, we see the users listed before a new user was created. Here we see the current users. Back at the attacker's command and control server, the attacker sends a command to create a new user account. A quick refresh in the device user list, and we see the newly created user account on the victim's machine. Meanwhile, in the background, privilege escalation is run. The attacker now has access to a valid account. For the defense evasion phase, built-in functionality of the malware obfuscates files, hiding artifacts of the intrusion from analysis to evade detection. The defenses of the device are also impaired by disabling the antivirus software. Here we can see the antivirus status before it is disabled. It is on. The attacker sends the delete antivirus command to the victim's machine. Now, when we check the status of the antivirus, we see that real-time protection has been disabled. A quick check of the system settings shows that it cannot be enabled. The attacker on their side starts a listener on a second malware command and control server and waits for the victim to connect. In this case, the attacker uses a known remote access Trojan malware that should be detected by antivirus software. But our victim's antivirus software has been disabled. A new session is created for the infected machine on the second command and control server. Here we see the command and control of the second malware on the attacker's server. Next, the attacker wants to obtain additional credentials to expand their capabilities. They use a tool that extracts credentials stored in the operating system. From their command and control server, the attacker deploys a tool for finding usernames and passwords on the victim's computer. The results are sent back to the command and control server, and new usernames appear in the history. Mimikatz is used to extract credentials from the operating system. Next, the discovery stage. The attacker wants to spread within the organization, so they use network service scanning to map the internal network. The attacker activates the internal network scanner from the command and control server. The network mapping shows the attacker more devices and systems that they can use for their next attack. The results, the computer's IP addresses and open ports, are sent back to the command and control center. Next, for the lateral movement stage, the attacker uses remote services to spread and infect more machines. The attacker selects a WMI worm from the attack options in the command and control server. The worm works by replicating itself in order to spread to other computers and servers on the network that are using the WMI service. As each new machine is infected, a new session is created in the session list. Now for each machine, the attacker can send attacks and collect information on the victim's computers. Now that access to the system has been established, the attacker can get to the sensitive information that they have come for. They do this by collecting screen captures. The malware in this APT uses HTTP application layer protocol for communications and for file and data transfers. The attacker steals data by exfiltrating it over an existing command and control channel. Stolen data is encoded into the normal communications channel using the same protocol as the command and control communications. The attacker sends the take screenshot command from their command and control server. The results arrive back at the command and control server. Here's the screenshot. Now reach the impact stage. Once the attacker has access to enough machines, they are ready for their last attack. Data on the target systems is encrypted to interrupt system availability and network resources. The attacker attempts to render stored data inaccessible by encrypting files or data on local and remote drives. The attacker may also launch an endpoint denial of service (DOS) attack to degrade or block the availability of services to users. Endpoint DOS can be performed by exhausting the system resources those services are hosted on, or exploiting the system to cause a persistent crash condition. To achieve data encryption and endpoint denial of service back at the command and control server, the attacker goes into attacks, selects the devices they want to attack and which attack they want to use, in this case, ransomware. The attacker sends the ransomware attack from the command and control server to all infected machines. On the infected machine, the victim is innocently logged on, unaware of everything that's been going on behind the scenes, until they are notified that their computer has been hacked, and the ransom demand is made. All the files have been encrypted, and the victim must pay 200 Bitcoin within 24 hours to get the decryption code to retrieve them. So, in this APT demo, we have shown the various steps involved in a common phishing and ransomware attack, one of the most rampant forms of cybercrime in recent years, used to target the vast majority of organizations.
Welcome to our series. We will be covering the protect, detect, and respond elements. I'm Gavin Vannikerk, Cybersecurity Practice Manager at Quorum. Cybersecurity is complicated. We are faced with a plethora of threats from various different threat actors. Consistency is key when addressing and managing risk. How do we ensure our teams are getting real-world attack exposure when, in reality, they may only be dealing with these occurrences very rarely and may be ill-prepared or not optimized to respond? Practice makes perfect. This is certainly true. And Microsoft have a strategic initiative to close what we see as a gap, or rather an opportunity to drive better security preparedness within organizations of all kinds and sizes. As a cybersecurity team, we have a lot of tools within our toolbox. These are all made more efficient by the native sharing and integration capabilities that Microsoft provides. We align ourselves as a team to the strategic nature of the MITRE ATT&CK framework, which highlights TTPs, tactics, techniques, and procedures used by threat actors. Further, the MITRE ATT&CK framework is surfaced within the Microsoft threat detection and prevention tools that we and our customers utilize. During this series, you will hear firsthand from our team of experts who use the tools such as CyberOne, our managed security portal, the Microsoft tools, as well as their experience going firsthand through the scenario-based training. Today, very pleased to have Tim. Tim joins us as a security analyst within the CyberOne team at Quorum. Welcome, Tim.
Thanks, Gavin.
This is a very exciting and challenging space. Could we start with your experiences? Let's call it a day in the life of a security analyst, Tim.
Thanks, Gavin. As a security analyst, I'm responsible for ensuring that the managed security service customers' digital assets are protected from unauthorized access. I utilize the CyberOne portal, which is our custom-built security incident and event management tool, and Microsoft security solutions, including the tools in the Microsoft Defender and Azure Defender suites to scour through events, incident metrics, and data to filter out suspicious activity and to find and mitigate risks before they occur. If a breach does occur, then I'm on the front line to assist with all the efforts to counter the attack. I'm doing this for multiple customers at once, so during periods of high activity, it can be a challenge, but it's a fun one, and I'm always learning something new. While each customer has configurations unique to their environment, the commonality in platform for Microsoft 365 and Azure means that any knowledge I gain, such as mitigating a certain type of risk for one customer, I can then take that playbook and apply it to our other customers to help improve their security posture as well. On the topic of improving our customers' security posture, part of my role is to identify and address software vulnerabilities in internal servers, external servers, and applications. I compile and analyze this vulnerability data along with incident data for reporting on a regular basis, normally quarterly and monthly. I use this reporting to provide customers regular updates on security activity on their environment and recommendations on security features and other practices such as software patch management that can be implemented to strengthen their posture. We utilize the Microsoft Secure Score as a baseline for customers' posture. It's a journey that we go on with our customers, and part of my role is to provide them with that advice and encouragement to help foster continual improvement.
Can you tell me a little bit more about TTPs and how you actually make them useful?
Sure. Day to day, I normally only deal with threats at the start of the kill chain, such as initial access and execution tactics. When we onboard customers to CyberOne, we also assist with an uplift to their security posture to get them to an acceptable standard. So while I have knowledge of dealing with threats in the latter stages using like credential access or exfiltration techniques, I only see them occasionally. So from the CyberGym virtual arena training, I gained valuable insight on intrusion detection and incident response tactics. The scenarios took advantage of social engineering tactics, exploits in third-party software with vulnerabilities such as web browsers, database attacks like SQL injections, and it reinforced the importance of user education on information security awareness, implementing security essentials, such as the Essential 8 for government, and that includes software patch management and implementing Microsoft security defaults for 365 and Azure, such as multi-factor authentication and conditional access policies. The training in the arena emphasized how effective that Microsoft Defender Suite and our CyberOne managed service are at stopping these attacks cold or in the very early stages of the kill chain.
Tim, we've spoken quite a bit around the MITRE ATT&CK framework. can you show us an example of how the MITRE ATT&CK framework is used for detect and respond purposes?
Sure, thanks, Gavin. I'm just showing here a advanced hunting query that I've run in Microsoft 365 Security Center under Microsoft 365 Defender. And this shows the types of MITRE ATT&CK techniques that I'm dealing with from our customers probably on a once-a-month basis. So I mentioned earlier the types of techniques that I normally see are initial access and execution. It looks like over the past 30 days, I've seen initial access, execution, and command and control.
Tim, as you and I both know, phishing attacks are still the most leveraged attack vector. How do you address this?
Yeah, it's by far the most common type of tactic and technique that I see on a daily basis is the initial access technique through phishing emails. Luckily, with Defender for Office 365, the vast majority of these incidents are handled by zero-hour auto purge and automated investigation and response. Sometimes I simply just need to approve the task for the investigation, such as the soft deletion of emails. So the output from this advanced hunting query that I've run in Microsoft 365 Security Center shows how many phishing incidents are resolved through automation, either through Zap each month. The manual remediation is simply just the soft deletion tasks that I have to approve, and then the automated investigation response continues on its way.
Tim, you referred to Sub1. Can you show us how you use this as a tool to further enable you?
Sure, Gavin. To streamline security service delivery and incident management across our customers' entire digital estate, I triage alerts from the CyberOne portal. Earlier, I showed an example of the phishing emails and the most common type of initial access incidents that we have. So another example of an initial access incident is an attempt to bypass a conditional access rule in Azure AD. So we receive these alerts from Azure Sentinel. In the CyberOne alerts dashboard, I've filtered the alerts to show the attempt to bypass conditional access rule in Azure AD. Open the alert, I can get more details. The alerts show me the description, so if I need further details, I can then open up the Azure Sentinel workspace. And in the Azure Sentinel workspace, I can open up the incidents page. I can open up the incident itself. From the incident, I can open up the alert to get more details. Sentinel's got an inbuilt query that it runs to get me the output. I can then use this to go further into the sign-in logs in Azure AD. And we found in a recent raft of these incidents that we had a few staff that had app passwords on their account in MFA was the app password was set. And so after investigating this and finding that for the authentication details bypassing the conditional access policy, I then spoke to the system administrator. They then deleted the app passwords for that customer, and we stopped receiving those alerts for that customer.
Tim, you've shown us some great examples of attacks that focus on the beginning of the kill chain. Do you have any other techniques that you see regularly?
Yes, Gavin, I do. I've got an example of an incident under the tactic and technique of data exfiltration, which is further down the end of the kill chain. We received an alert in CyberOne for data exfiltration to an unsanctioned app. That alert came through from Microsoft Cloud App Security. Looking in the CyberOne alert, I can then, it's got a few details in there, so I can then go into the alert in Cloud App Security itself. And from this, I can see the amount of data, like it shows the description again, but it doesn't paint much of a picture. So to get more details on what may have triggered this alert, I went into Defender for Endpoint. I then ran this advanced hunting query. That then gives me a lot more data from the actual device itself. And what we found after getting this information and then also discussing it with the user was it was a cumulative effect of data upload. It was a mixture of the user uploading data to this service themselves and also services running in the background that was then also contributing to that. And that over time, that data upload amount then triggered the alert in Microsoft Cloud App Security, which ended up being benign.
Tim, how do you better control data exfiltration, either during an incident or as part of an enterprise security posture uplift?
That's a great question, Gavin. So if you have in the settings of Cloud App Security, the Defender for Endpoint integration configured, then you can have any unsanctioned apps blocked automatically. In Defender for Endpoint, this then automatically creates a bunch of custom indicators for URLs associated with that app that are used to access that app.
Tim, does this create a lot of alerts?
It does. And in CyberOne, you can see a number of alerts for a connection to a custom network indicator coming through to CyberOne. However, to mitigate this, what we do in Defender for Endpoint is set up alert suppression rules. And these alert suppression rules can automatically resolve these types of alerts.
Welcome to our series. Within our series, we will be covering the protect, detect, and respond elements. I'm your facilitator, Gavin Vanica. Today we have Eden. Eden is a cybersecurity consultant within the CyberOne team at Quorum. Welcome, Eden.
Hi, Gavin. Good to be here.
Eden, this is a very exciting and challenging space. Could we start with an explanation or some insights, the day in the life of a cybersecurity consultant?
Yeah, so as a consultant specializing in Microsoft security, my job is really about helping our customers with their security journey within the Microsoft 365 and Azure clouds. What we try to do is look at the customer's current environment, understand their organization, understand their current challenges and difficulties, and also where they'd like to get to and be in terms of their cybersecurity capabilities and security posture, and then work with them in terms of providing some strategy and guidance around how they can get to that security level using the Microsoft tools in a structured manner.
Excellent. Thanks, Eden. I understand the CyberOne team recently went through an exercise with what they refer to as the arena. Could you tell me a little bit more about that and your experiences?
Yeah, look, that was a really interesting and insightful training session. It was more of a real-world scenario-based training where it really gave us the opportunity to get into the mindset of an attacker, and also to see just how easily a system can be breached if the right security tools and controls aren't in place. I think it also highlighted the value of having a unified set of security tools, which can actually identify, correlate, and make sense of all of the different signals and telemetry that are being logged and monitored within your environment to actually help you understand what is happening, and give you some meaningful guidance in terms of what the threat is, what the next steps are to take, and how you can actually try and stop or mitigate an attack. As I said, being a real world scenario based training, it also helped us understand some of our challenges around communication, teamwork, and how we actually respond to a security threat.
That sounds like a very valuable exercise. We often talk about the MITRE-ATT&CK framework. So the MITRE-ATT&CK framework is a key strategy that we align to as a cybersecurity team using tactics and techniques, TDPs. Can you tell me how you use this to enable our customers?
Yeah, so as you said, the MITRE-ATT&CK framework really helps to outline the various tactics and techniques that are used by adversaries when they try to attack and breach our system. And it's really based on the real world observations of how adversaries are actually going about their business, so to speak. So when we look at the Microsoft security tools, we look at how those tools can actually help us to detect and prevent attacks throughout their life cycle based on that MITRE-ATT&CK framework.
That's excellent. And can you talk us through a specific example of how the MITRE-ATT&CK framework and the Microsoft tools are better used together to protect and detect?
Absolutely. So, one of the common scenarios that is still quite prevalent around the world is attacks that come in through email, malware delivery through email, for example. So looking at the Microsoft tool sets and the MITRE-ATT&CK framework, we look at the different sort of controls and security tools that we can actually use to try and prevent and mitigate that attack throughout its life cycle. So as with most attacks, if we can stop it at the front door, that's really the best case scenario. And we have tools such as the Microsoft Defender for Office 365 service, which is actively scanning emails all the time for suspicious attachments. And it may very well be able to actually detect and block that threat before it can even get into our environment. However, in many instances, it may actually still be delivered to a user's inbox, for example, as a malware email attachment. And then we have to look at the different other options that we have in terms of trying to prevent it. So again, using the Microsoft Defender for Office 365 toolset, we can use a feature known as the 0-hour auto purge that can actually detect and remediate malicious emails even after they have been delivered to a user's inbox. So again, trying to prevent that attack before it can get off the ground. But let's say, for example, that the 0-hour auto purge isn't able to detect that threat, and the user actually opens that attachment from their email. Now we have to pivot to some other different security tools and controls to again try and limit the attack in its steps. So what we're looking at there is using Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, again to actually then scan and try and detect that malware and identify it as malware and prevent it from executing on that end user's machine. If we're looking at a sophisticated piece of malware or something that isn't able to be detected by an antivirus scan, we then look at other features within the Microsoft Defender for Endpoint toolset, where it actually starts looking at things like behavior and anomalies and comparing them to baselines to see if something suspicious may actually be happening. So not relying on some of those traditional antivirus tools such as scanning for file hashes and things like that, but looking more along behavior and what is actually happening on that device. If, for example, that is still not enough to detect and block the threat, we have other controls across the Microsoft 365 toolset. So one of the common malware attacks that we see is ransomware that tries to encrypt files within your environment. tools such as Microsoft Cloud App Security, as well as Defender for Endpoint, can actually try and detect files that are being encrypted and mitigate the threat there and then. Another one that we might see commonly is that the malware might try to exfiltrate data from an environment. Again, tools such as Microsoft Cloud App Security, as well as controls such as data loss prevention, can help us limit and mitigate that threat. Another common malware a threat might be things where it's actually trying to steal users' credentials and compromise a user account within our environment. For hybrid environments, we have Microsoft Defender for Identity, which can again try and detect and mitigate some of those pass the hash type attacks involving user identities and passwords and credential stealing. If user identities become compromised, we can also use Microsoft Identity Protection to alert us to that, or to try and actually prevent those users being able to access our resources when they sign in. And finally, we have new and emerging malware threats that are happening all the time. And then we have some of the advanced capabilities within the Microsoft security stack. So tools such as Microsoft Defender for Endpoint Advanced Hunting, Azure Sentinel as well, along with the capabilities of the Microsoft threat experts, can help us to investigate and remediate some of those advanced threats.
Excellent. These are all great examples of attacks and different attack vectors, some of them focusing on the beginning of the kill chain. Do you see any other techniques regularly?
Look, I think one of the emerging threats that's happening globally that we're seeing quite a lot of these days is things like supply chain attacks and attacks through third parties. In the global security landscape that we're in at the moment, security is really a shared responsibility. And unfortunately, what can often happen is that the security weaknesses or security vulnerabilities of others who are trusted to us can actually become security issues for our environment. That's where we need to look at controlling and monitoring things such as shadow IT and third-party services, so that, as I said, their vulnerabilities and their security breaches don't affect us.
Very, very good insights. Thank you for sharing that. And how do you better control data exfiltration, either during an incident response type requirement or as part of an enterprise security posture uplift?
Look, I think as with most things in security, it requires a layered approach. So as I alluded to there earlier, if we can stop threats at the front door or as soon as possible within that attack chain, the better. So as with most security, we want to have those controls in place that can reduce our exposure and vulnerability to those sorts of attacks. But in the event that they are able to get past those security controls, then we look at some of our advanced capabilities such as information protection and data loss prevention that can actually limit our exposure if that data is reached.
Excellent, thank you. I've recently seen an example of a security playbook that you developed for a customer to meet certain requirements. What's the benefit of having security playbooks?
Look, I think the benefit of having a security playbook, really, it helps you understand what the attacker's targets are, what controls we have in place to mitigate and prevent those attacks, and gives us a series of steps that we can actually execute in a logical way so that we know our troubleshooting and investigation path along that security framework and along that attack chain as well, and gives us some structure and ability to actually investigate, detect and prevent these threats throughout their life cycle.
Ed, we hear a lot of buzz and talk about zero trust. How do you make this real for customers?
Zero Trust it's a new security strategy that really helps us implement security for the modern landscape that we're in. What we're talking about there is the modern IT environments that we see, a mixture generally of on-premises and cloud, but also, especially in recent years, a new way of working for many organizations as well. Our applications and our data can be all across the world, as can our users and their devices. If you think back to traditional IT environments as they used to be in the past, oftentimes we could use network boundaries as our security controls. Our applications, our services, our data, our users, and our devices were all within our offices and our office buildings, and we could isolate them from the outside world using network boundaries and network controls. In this modern way of working and modern IT environments, we need a new security strategy, and that's where Zero Trust comes in. We use identity and access management as the security control plane to gatekeep access to our resources. And what this really does is it changes our security mindset. What we're doing really is making sure that we don't trust, we always verify. Every access request, every sign-in, every time somebody tries to access an application or data within our environment, we need to check who that user is, where they're coming from, what they're accessing, what they're doing, and making sure that we have checks and balances across the board to make sure that we can actually let the good guys in and keep the bad guys out.
That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for sharing those insights.
Welcome to our series where we'll be covering the protect, detect, and respond elements. I'm the Product Marketing Manager for CyberOne, and today we have Gavin, Cybersecurity Practice Manager at Quorum. Gavin, can you walk us through a day in the life of your role?
Yeah, thanks very much, Christine. Really pleased to be here. It is certainly a challenging but rewarding space. For us as a team, consistency is a key message that we talk about really, really often. This is a key driver to success for us. Sometimes what this means is not being scared to stretch ourselves, try new technologies, fail fast so we can figure out what works for us as a team and deliver on the best outcomes for our customers.
Great. So through this series, we'll be focusing on protect, detect, and respond. Can you dive into a little bit more detail around the protect element?
Absolutely. So to set a little bit of context, we're as Quorum and the Cloud Collective are Microsoft Gold partners. We hold a number of advanced specializations. These include advanced specializations in advanced threat protection. So we understand protecting customers' data, infrastructure, endpoints, applications, and identities. We're also a partner member within MISA, which is Microsoft's Intelligent Security Association. So we understand protecting our customers very, very well.
Great. And can you tell me the value you see in scenario-based training as opposed to traditional training?
Yeah, absolutely. I see the benefits with scenario-based training, giving individuals that aren't necessarily formal members of the cybersecurity team, but are involved when an incident occurs, insights into the whole process. It gives those members as an opportunity to be involved. We have a mantra that we talk to often to take from the Cyber Gym team is test, train, and tune. We really believe this leads to the best outcomes for teams as a whole, not just individuals.
And can you give us a little insight of what it looks like when you enter the arena?
Absolutely. This is an emulated, isolated environment. The intention of the arena is to create a safe space. I think that's the first thing that's important to understand. A safe space for teams to be able to execute otherwise quite sophisticated, complicated, and potentially dangerous attacks against the team. So what this enables is those teams to get visibility into what a real world attack looks like. Not just, and not to take anything away, but what we see and we hear commentary from Tim, one of our security analysts, further on in the series, where he says where he sees most attacks occur is around initial access. Typical phishing type attacks, granted credential theft also lives within that realm. But what we generally don't see day to day is these more advanced, sophisticated attacks that is often referred to as APTs. So within the arena, we have defined a set of APTs, and we run these APTs against the blue team, which would be my team, and gives us an opportunity to see how the team actually responds.
And how do the team respond to high pressure situations?
Yeah, this is really a great question. Different individuals will sometimes show different levels or abilities to cope with pressure differently in pressure situations. We often say practice makes perfect, and this is true. Another approach is rinse and repeat. We can and we encourage customers to go through this exercise regularly as opposed to a one-time occurrence, and figure out what good looks like. What good looks like for your team, what good looks like within your organization, and lastly, what a good response looks like when you're under pressure from an advanced attacker. It is imperative to invest not only in technology, granted you need to invest in the right technology, but also investing in your people, as well as not forgetting about your process. Sometimes we work on different things at different times. This is maybe sometimes how your team, as an example, handled pressure. We'll have team debriefs. This is never about targeting any individual within the team. This is always in a team context, lifting up the team, bringing out shortfalls, granted, but what can the team glean from this in terms of positive experience, discuss those lessons learned, and ultimately pulling together better as a team or a virtual team, if that's your scenario.
Great, there's some really good insights. Thank you. Can you also take us to a certain level of depth to some of the insights that you leverage as a technical team?
Absolutely. So there's a number of elements that we use. I always say to the team quite often in conversation, use the right tool for the job. So a very effective tool for us is coming from the cyberattack framework. This is an invaluable tool in our toolbox. It enables us and gives us key strategy insights. It enables us to draw very close alignment within the cybersecurity team. It flows directly into the Microsoft tools from a security framework perspective. What that means in practical terms is the Microsoft security tools understand the cyberattack framework and respond accordingly to visualize, where the attack actually sits accordingly and appropriately to the cyberattack framework. We utilize the framework heavily to understand current state versus future state. This is really important when we go into the arena in terms of understanding your current state, a common ground between customers. Let's understand your current state according to the cyberattack framework. Build on that, understand where your gaps are, and then further understand your future state according to the cyberattack framework and the Microsoft components that you have to support your strategy. So what this does is quite quickly helps us to figure out where you have gaps in your protect, detect, and respond strategies. This is not only from a technical insights perspective, so it's also ensuring you have the right logs and you have the right data sets, but also ensuring you have enough of the right process.